On today's episode, I talk about reading the wind with pro staffer at Next Buck Outdoors, homemade DIY scent cover tips, and deer hunter shooting at dead deer.
Hunt, 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 hunt.
Welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast, the podcast that connects public land hunting enthusiasts. Today is October 14th, 2015. This is episode 24. I'm your host, Eric Clark, and welcome back to another informative episode. On this episode, I brought on a guest. It's Sean Van Landingham. He's a pro staffer at Next Buck Outdoors. They are very passionate, highly skilled, and experienced hunters that like to bring their niches. They bring a lot of value to their DVDs that they release. Very educational and informative. So through this interview, I talked with Sean a lot about reading the wind, knowing when and where you should access land based on where big bucks could be bedded down, things like that. And we also get into thermos a little bit as well. A lot of good information. I will go ahead and bring him on the show right now. We're going to go ahead and welcome our guest of the week to the show. We have Sean Van Landingham, a pro staffer at Next Buck Outdoors. Sean, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
All right. How long have you been a pro staffer at Next Buck?
I haven't really kept track of the years, but I've been friends with the guys that have run it probably the better part of 10 plus years now. So it's probably maybe like 2000, maybe 2009 that I started with that, and before that I was affiliated with another production TV show and stuff that I did some work for, but this is definitely more my style. It's do it yourself, hunting the neighbor or family property, not this big managed tract and stuff, or like a lot of guys do, hunting the public land.
That's awesome. Which is what we're all about here at Where to Hunt. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly.
That's what drew me to seek you guys out. Tell me in the audience, for those that don't know, a little bit about Next Buck. What does make you guys different than other people making hunting shows and DVDs and things like that?
Sure. A lot the average guy, but the average guy doesn't have a 2,000 acre farm that they can pretty much control. Some of us have our own properties. I have my own farm, but my farm is 56 acres, huntable. We hunt a lot of public stuff. Probably at least half of us probably spend half of our time on public land. We'll travel out of state if we have to find a good spot on one of the state hunts. They're not. They're and not going to something that's almost an outfitter or some big sponsor, something. It
sounds like
person is going to go out and do.
You broke up there just a little bit. Sorry about that.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me okay again?
Yeah, you're good now. Go ahead from where you were. Sorry.
All right, sure. So yeah, we just try to. I mean, we are your average guy. We all have our regular jobs. Some of us have multiple jobs, but we all have this big passion to hunt whitetails, and we want to do it on our own. And what we really want to do is, we're not all about getting Hollywood style footage. While that's great, we want to really teach people. We're telling people how we're doing it, not that we know everything, but if we can tell you how we're successful year in and year out, I think we got a lot of good things there in our collective knowledge. Not that any one person knows everything, but our group of guys, I think, is pretty top notch when it comes to getting after the whitetails.
That's cool. No, I like your guys' approach and style quite a bit. So we'll break off from that. Tell us about yourself. How long have you been hunting for?
Sure. Well, it's going to date me a little bit, but I've been hunting for, I think, 20 years, but it seems like even longer because I think, unfortunately, when I was young, we didn't have these early youth hunt programs, so I had to wait a couple extra years. So I think even when I was probably, 6, 7 years old, as soon as I can get out of the house, I was trying to find a deer trail, find a deer track, see where it went, see where it laid down. I'd be asking my neighbors what they see for deer, how big it was, and where were they going. So even before I had a bow in my hand, I felt like, I had some degree of where I was hunting a little bit, and, I'd be waiting for, my dad to come back or anyone else I knew that was older out hunting. I wanted to hear the stories. I would sit and pester to hear them over and over. So, I'd just try to absorb back then everything I could, and it just translated to, what I do now. So yeah, it's a lot of guys have their passions in life, but mine has kind of always been whitetails.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at. Which
yeah.
is, I don't know, it's a very hard thing to explain. It's almost like it's in your bones, and I've said that before, but I don't know any other way to describe it, A lot of heritage, too, and tradition and things like that. So obviously, whitetail's your favorite animal to hunt. That's one of the questions I had on here.
Yeah. It's, I've only gotten to dabble a little bit into elk hunting. I did earlier this year, and it wasn't enough where I could say, yeah, elk is now the thing, but I'll definitely keep after it. But, no matter what, I think even any other serious hunter, if they come back to one game animal, it's probably the whitetail. It's so easy for us to relate to. They're everywhere, and there's unique things about them that just make them fun, and they're not all the same to hunt, on every single property. There's differences no matter where you go.
Yeah, that's very true. Like Kansas, for instance, I think it's very wide open there, so you're not going to have a hardwoods, and then you have the swamp type hunting, and there's all sorts of different ways to try to get them because they're all over, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, the reason I sought you out, in addition to the fact that you guys hunt a lot of public, is I'm definitely not an expert in any regard, and I love learning about hunting in any capacity I possibly can. And one of the things that kind of tripped my trigger over a lot of the seasons, but this season especially, because I want to get better at it every time, is reading the wind. And it seems like a pretty straightforward thing, really, but then you can kind of unpack it, and it turns out there's a lot that goes into reading the wind. So hopefully you can help me navigate through this and answer a bunch of the questions here. But the first question I have in regard to that is it better to hunt when there's wind or no wind? Which, again, sounds obvious, but you tell me.
Sure. And I'll preface this that I think, one, to have a successful hunt, I think obviously you got to be hunting where the deer are, and if you're after a good deer, where good deer are. And then I would say, the next key to success is get in and out, and then I think what ties right in with that is the wind and learning how to use it and how it can hurt you, how it can help you. It's definitely friend or foe. And getting into your question, no wind or a lot of wind. I was thinking about that earlier today, and to be honest, just about every single buck I have on my wall is calm on those pretty calm days after a big front. It's been those clear, calm days. Not totally calm, but pretty calm days. Now, if I had to pick a second one, I would go to the other extreme, a really, really big wind. I've had some tremendous hunts in there, and the only thing that's kept a couple of bucks from being on the wall is a limb. So no wind or wind, I guess, it kind of depends. I would say probably if I had to choose, I'd pick no wind, but then other than that, I would probably want a really high wind, especially if it's cold. If it's really warm and you got a high wind, well, then I'm kind of thinking, well, is this really going to be a sit that I want to possibly, take a chance on spooking on that buck. Maybe I'll do something else. I won't hunt a certain stand, but maybe I'll go find a cornfield and I'll, do a little spot and stalk with a cornfield somewhere where I feel like I can take a bigger risk if I bump a deer. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer that, I kind of like both, but based on my experiences, those nice, clear, calm days after a front move through has been really kind to me.
That's good to know. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, to be honest. If I had to make up my own answer, I'd say a consistent wind would probably be pretty nice because I know it gets pretty shifty, and
but sometimes the shift, if you're in a spot, that it's wrong right away, if you can, sometimes guys will go into the stand and they'll go in too early, but maybe that shift has that buck bedding right where you want them to be, but the way the wind's going, you can't get in, and guys will make a mistake. Well, I'm going to hunt that spot anyways, and he picks you off as you go in and you never see him. But if based on that wind, there's a good chance he's going to be bedding there, but there's going to be a shift, or maybe, it's going to get really cold just before dark and it's going to start dropping and he's going to be up on his feet. If you can wait and get in that stand undetected, well, then that shift is going to help you out.
That's a good thought too. This is the whole purpose of this podcast, is to flesh some of these topics out, because the things we cover on the show, by and large, it's stuff that it's just not top of mind. So this is gold, man. I'm telling you, I appreciate you coming on. I'm just going to say that right now. And so like, there wouldn't be, the follow-up to that is what's the ideal wind speed? There probably isn't one, obviously, and we kind of talked about that a little bit, whether it's a very windy day versus not a very windy day.
I will say there's definitely a correlation, the movements when it's calm after a big front, and obviously colder the better, and the same thing with a high wind. If it's cold and you got a high wind, especially as you're in the late October, November, those bucks are going to be on their feet anyways. And you're definitely going to have the advantage going in and out because they're not going to hear you,
Right.
You're obviously not going to grunt to rattle them in, but you'll see them cruising. And some of the biggest bucks I've seen during the day on their feet have been on those super high wind days. I remember an Iowa hunt, and it was blowing 40, 45 miles an hour, and it did it for 40 straight. And in those 4 days, I saw 12 bucks over 140 inches.
Those are big animals. That's a lot too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a time to be sitting on the couch for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing to pay attention to because like right now it's October 14th, and it seems like usually right around Halloween time is when the rut's kind of like getting into full swing. So it's a pretty good idea to start paying attention to the weather and fronts and things like that. If that's what we're talking about, keep your eye on your weather channel or weather app or whatever you have. Yeah,
I think I look at it on my cell phone probably about every half hour, and I'm looking at that extended forecast. I'm like, what is it going to do 3 days from now? Because I'm trying to think of one of maybe 4 or 5 different spots I'm going to go based on what it's like. And I'll look at the wind speed, and, just because I know what the spot is like, I'll be thinking about, okay, if it's going to be like this, I really want to sit there. This buck's been active in here. How can I get in here with that wind? I'll just, it's just like a Rolodex going on in my mind. It just never stops. But, that's kind of what it takes to get into the right spot, rather than, thinking you're just going to get, pigeonholed into 1 or 2 spots and just hope that wind is right. And, you could make your season or break your season by what you do at that time. So, I really pay attention to it.
The overarching thing that gets me a lot, so knowing, is there wind and or, what direction is it blowing, what's the wind speed, you take that all into consideration and great. That's one piece of a bigger puzzle. The thing I struggle with being a public land hunter, I'll hunt I've hunted 4 times this season and I have not hunted the same spot twice yet this season alone. Some of that's a little bit of exploration. Some of it's going to public land I've hunted in years past. So in some instances, I know the land better than others. But in the case where I don't, and I want to understand what the wind's doing, some of that is it almost seems pointless, to the tune of, if I don't know where the deer are, I'm kind of like going in blind, really. Actually, that's exactly what's happening. I'm going in blind.
Sure. So yeah.
knowing the wind direction is usually most relevant, or only relevant, when you know where the beds are or where the deer are going to be, or something to that. You obviously don't know where they are. Otherwise, 100%.
Yeah,
otherwise, you just go in and, there's the deer's right there. I'll go kill it right now. That's not how it works. But you have to have a general idea at least, right?
Sure, exactly. And, when I go into have a newer public land area, ideally I've scouted it some, but a lot of the spots I've hunted, it's been learn as I go. And sometimes public land hunting.
All right, a little technical difficulty there. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, as I was saying, when I go into public land, I just, I'm not afraid of failing. Sometimes I'll look at a public land piece and think it might be a 2 or 3 year project. So occasionally I may, and I like to push it too, where I set. I want to get as close to these bucks as I can and get away from the pressure. And sometimes I'll do that and I might bump a deer, but when I do that, I'll pay attention. What is the wind doing? Where did the deer go based on that wind? And maybe I did fail that day, but gosh, I'll learn a lot that I can come back the next time. And, chances are, I'm going to have a much more successful hunt that time. Sometimes you can be, I think if you look at all the stats of what the wind and the weather's doing, sometimes you can get a little too timid going in. And I don't like to just traipse everywhere, but all of the specific spot I want to go. But kind of what I do just to hedge my bet, if I got a spot, I'll look on a map. I'm like, I think this is where I want to go. As I'm walking, I'll take the, dried up milkweed pods, and as I go along, I'm going to just let them go out. And if it looks like I'm going to get busted, well, then it's time for, plan B. And there's been times where I go out and I have total intentions in sitting in one spot, and then I'll get 40 yards into the woods and I'm like, no, this just isn't working right, because I haven't experienced that time of year with that amount of foliage on the trees and what those air currents are doing. They're doing something totally different than what I did, than what I thought, because maybe it's early and I was there in the spring and there wasn't much for leaves, so the sun was hitting the ground, so it made those air currents do something different than when it was cool and shaded. It's just examples like that where I've done something, had make an adjustment on public land. But otherwise, what I kind of try to do is, if you get enough experience, in a lot of what I hunt is hill country, so it makes things a little bit trickier. But what I try to do is find terrain pattern features that I've experienced in the past, and based on the past with this type of slope and this type of wind speed, this is kind of what I had before, and I think I'll experience that again on this piece. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and the times it doesn't, I just learned from it and I prepared for the next hunt based on that.
Well, the way you had said a moment ago about, if I'm walking in the woods and I kick up a deer or whatever, as that thing's trouncing off with the mighty white flag, which we all hate to see, instead of just going, oh crap, there it goes, stop and think, okay, well, I know I'm going this way, the wind's going that way, and that thing's going this direction, and then back up and in your mind and think about what's actually happening there and look at the bigger picture. That's a really cool thought, because I've done that and I've never really just stopped in that moment and thought about it. I've always just been like, oh crap, there goes my chance today, as opposed to thinking, well, why was it going that way? What direction was the wind blowing? That's a pretty big consideration.
Yeah, and depending on how bad you busted the deer out, and I had one hunt last year that was exactly like that. I was on a really big deer, and I thought I had the perfect wind, and I kind of did, except for he was bedding in the wrong spot. I guess it might have been the right spot, but it was the wrong spot for where I was walking in, and I blew him right out, and I blew it bad. So, I wasn't going to get on that buck again. So I said, the heck with it. I canned that hunt. But what I did instead is I took that spot and I learned everything I could about that deer and why he was there and where he might be going without, trying to, I won't keep following him. I think sometimes people do that too, and see a big buck and then be like, oh, I'm going to follow him. I can be set up on him. And, that that's pretty tough to do. So if I get in a spot, it's like, if he was there right then for a reason. And it's like, why was that?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause really that buck, if he's big, he didn't grow that big because he's stupid per se. I'm not going to give deer too much credit here, but at the end of the day, what's to say another big buck has the same senses that one did? It'll probably choose a similar spot, if not the same exact one, because there's obviously an advantage to be in that spot bedding down in that area that we're not aware of, that the animals are. And if one buck's going to do it, what's to say another one isn't going to do the same thing in another year or 2 years or whatever? There's
exactly.
Yep.
And matter of fact, now this was a public land. This was a private farm I had, but it was a perfect example where in 1 year I thought I had the perfect tree. I had a couple of bucks come by that it wasn't the one I wanted, but I thought it was perfect. But then lo and behold, any buck I wanted was just on the other side of this big oak tree. It was about 30 yards up. And darn, I just didn't feel like I could move there, and it would just take too much trimming, I thought, that year to move. So I just, cataloged that in my mind, and then I moved that next year, and, I shot a really nice buck that next year. Just based on that move. So it's like, it might not happen that year. It might be the next year, but that intel is definitely valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's a cool thing when it sucks when it happens in the middle of hunting season when you're hoping to get that guy. It's a lot cooler when that kind of stuff happens in the off season in spring when you're scouting, because then you get really jacked up about the next season. So, but nonetheless, It's a learning experience, like you had mentioned. It's something you have to take and learn. You have to keep going, and you have, what would you say, it was like 25 years of hunting experience?
Yeah, it's 28 now.
28. All right. Sorry. But that's 28 years of hunting experience. My gosh, man. There's a reason that you're talking right now, because there's a lot of value in what you have to say. I don't have that much experience,
Yeah, and
I learn from other people's mistakes and things like that.
Yeah, and I've made a lot of mistakes. So I think my first 3 or 4 years I hunted, I loved being on the ground. So all I did was walk over the country everywhere. I busted so many deer out, it wasn't even funny. But doing so, making all those mistakes, I learned a ton. And looking back on it now, it's like I shake my head at some of the things I did and be like, boy, man, I could have laid down a couple nice bucks that I'd come close to, and I just walking the wrong way or not using the thermal advantage. Gosh, it would have made such a difference back then. But
hindsight's 20/20, man. That's all.
Yeah, and without doing some of that and seeing the result, it's really hard. You can be told one thing, but until you kind of experience it, sometimes it doesn't sink in.
Yeah. If I would have listened to my parents throughout my youth, Same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to experience it for yourself to really take it in and actually genuinely learn what it is you need to do differently next time. But you said something interesting in there, understanding the thermals. Let's unpack that for a minute or two here. What are thermals, and how do you deal with them or read them or understand them? How can you hunt better as a result of understanding that?
In the most basic sense, I guess, if you put it in layman's terms, it's just the up or down rise, the air currents, just based on the cooling and the heating up of the air. Of course, it's usually from the sun coming up in the day and then going down in the evening. And it's really helped. It's definitely helped me in at least my last 2 buck kills. For sure, because I was set up that if it wouldn't have been helping me, it just wouldn't have happened. I love it when a buck thinks he's safe and he comes out of his bed and he can get his trail where he thinks he's getting your scent from anything along that field, but you're in that stand and what you would think is the wrong wind blowing straight to that trail, but just before it gets to that trail, you get that nice updraft and he can't get you. That's just money in the bank. And
yeah, it's a pretty cool feeling.
In my buck I shot last year, if I didn't have that draft coming up, because I rattled and he came around me, and if I wouldn't have had a draft going up, I'm pretty sure he would have nailed me. And even my previous buck, if I didn't have a draft going up behind me, my scent would have went right to him, and I would have been dead meat. But since I had that nice updraft going, there was no way for him to smell me.
That's cool. Is it? Do you, in your experience, do you think it's more active? Like thermals are more active in the morning or the nighttime? I know it kind of varies, but is it always an updraft that's happening, or it's?
Well, I've had good luck on downdrafts. I don't want to pretend that, and I think there's people out there that don't pretend they know too much about the wind and they want to generalize too much. But in my experience, so much of what you see is stand to stand specific. There's some things and kind of rules you can apply, but I've had spots where, you want to, in the afternoon, you're not going to get that much of an updraft. Like you think you might. If you look at the aerial, you think, oh, this can give me a good updraft. But the updraft isn't really much of an updraft. It might be blowing a little bit more sideways. At some point along the deer trail, they're going to get you. But if you wait just a little while later, you're going to get this awesome downdraft to where, okay, I don't want to be above the deer, maybe be below the deer at this time, and he's going to still come right by thinking he's still going to get that scent off the field or something, for example, and he's never going to be able to catch you. I've been successful that way too. That's just one thing too, is sometimes you've got to plan your hunts hour by hour, and it's not beyond me or some of the other guys on our next buck staff that we may hunt one spot for a couple hours in the morning, and by mid-morning we're up in a different stand, or afternoon we're in one stand, and by the time we come out at night we're in a different stand.
Yeah, that says a lot about what you know. That's some people are I'm getting much better at it, but some people, including myself, in a spot I'm like deathly afraid of moving, because I'm like, well, if I move, then maybe I wouldn't have gotten him, or maybe that kind of crap.
I know. I get like that still too, where I'm debating in my head. I'm like, should I move? Should I move? Should I not move? But if I don't move and this deer gets by me, the jig's
over
up.
Anyways, yeah. So might as well move so you have a better advantage when something does come by.
And if you think about it, you can get away, especially if you pre-scout this other tree you need to be in, you can get away with pretty quick. And if you're good, with your whatever stand you got, if you practice with it and you're good, you can get set up much faster than what you probably think you can in your head. By the time you debate whether you should move or not, you could have already moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the whole topic of wind is just a big a big tribute to how ridiculously good deer are at smelling things. So it's a great help to understand some of the behavior of the wind and how it can impact your hunt, just based on the fact that these animals, that's their go-to thing is just smelling. That's it. They rely on it more than any other sense.
For sure. I mean, if the deer could smell, I don't think there'd be too many deer out in the woods.
That's a good point. And the fact that they do, I mean, deer use the wind to their advantage to the fullest degree. Like, if you're trying to call one in and you're playing the wind correctly, it's going to try to go around you to get to scent you first before it wants to come check you out with a visual. It's crazy. It's crazy how much they rely on that. So it's a pretty cool topic. I really appreciate you kind of going over some of this stuff.
Yeah. It's not rocket science, but you definitely got to put some thought into it, just because there's so many variables into what can change it, into how spot specific it can be. And, if you just think about it, just like picture water flowing through the terrain, how would water flow through here? And if there was a really fast current, if you're even thinking about if you fish a lot, relates that. If there was a really fast current here, where would the fish be staged up? Or, just if you think about that, or if you're just out there just yourself and be like, oh, if I just wanted to get out of one, where would I be?
Yeah.
And then you might be able to pick out the details just on that. If you kind of know how the wind's going to play through, well, can I get around them? Can I use the thermals? When they're, falling or rising, will the stand work? Will not only your stand setup work, can you get in and out?
Yep.
With those thermals? A lot of times if you are hunting high and the deer are coming around and then all the drop down, and if there are still deer below you, and you got to get through, you're kind of in trouble getting out. Let's say you're hunting low and you're heading high. Well, hopefully, it's not in the morning. You're blown right back up to where they're bedding now. So, that's just, it's a stand too, and a bit where it's been really low and it's a big valley, and I'll wait till that updraft is really blowing straight up before I can think about moving. And if I get halfway up here, if that draft isn't totally taking me up, well, they're going to bust me when I come out.
Yeah, it's a lot to, like you said, it's not rocket science, but it's something to be conscious of. But you actually do have to think about it if you're trying to take hunting seriously. And if you're actually after, the bigger, smarter ones out there, or you really, really need that meat in your freezer, these are the things you ought to be thinking about.
Yeah, and and a lot of it too is it's not always the deer you're after. It's the deer that comes before the deer you're after. When you got big full mama doe, that's your hardest deer in the woods to fool. And
yeah, you're right.
If you play that wrong, yeah, everybody's gonna know that you screwed up. So that's my first thought is how are these thermals going to be? How is that wind direction going to be? Is there going to be deflection? How do I get around this first batch of deer?
Yep. Well, that happened to me, a few years ago. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was hunting. There's a small little, I don't know, swamp or pond or whatever you want to call it in the woods, and I was hunting on a ridge, not below it or not above it or on the top of the crest of it. I was actually on the ridge itself, based on where some of the deer trails were, and based on the wind direction where I set myself up. I know initially when I got out there, so you're talking hunt hour by hour. That's a pretty awesome thing to think about, because I know for certain when I got out there the wind was blowing a certain way. Now as it got later into the evening and the sun's starting to set and it's prime time, this doe and her fawn came walking through from kind of behind me, and so I know there's absolutely no chance she had seen me, zero. And where the wind was blowing, there should have been no chance that she smelled me. But I tell you, man, this thing stood there, stomped and snorted for a good minute, and then bolted off. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell happened here? Nothing. What the heck? And I guarantee you is because the wind died down and the thermals were doing something wacky that probably got me caught. So.
Yeah, and that is your one, tricky part when you don't have much wind is, the thermals are going to be there, and sometimes if you got wind and you got thermals going down, it can be great where it's going to pull it away. But then that is the one wind I just get so leery on. It's awesome late in fall when the leaves are crunchy and you can hear everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get that dead scent pool, I mean, you're just making circles and wider and wider where they can pick up your scent. I mean, if you just think sometimes even like how a campfire is.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Yep.
You just get dead wind, that smoke could kind of, a bigger and bigger area.
It kind of billows out, yeah.
And then you can see it's going to go away. So, yeah, that gets tough. I mean, people get busted a lot on those days. I mean, I certainly do.
It is what it is. It's a learning thing, Now I got to stop and think about it. This has been a good topic. Again, thank you, man, for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And hopefully you have a lot of luck this season as we get kind of closer and closer to the rut, depending on where you're at in the state. Hopefully you have some activity you can take advantage of soon.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed the deer activity pick up this last week, and it should be exciting. Although I got just one deer I'm after this season, but at least in the meantime, both my kids hunt. So whether I take them out or hear their stories, it kind of makes it more exciting for me to hear what's up with them than what I got going on.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. It's a really cool thing. Well, so are we going to see you on when's the next DVD being released for you guys over at Next Buck? Am I going to see you on it?
And some great kills. We got a little bit of post-production to finish up with it, and I'm really hoping it'll be out this next season. When you get guys from anywhere from Georgia to Ohio to Michigan, Wisconsin, Idaho, you got a wide range of guys out there, and since just truly your average guy getting schedules together to get this content is, we're not to pay off our mortgages. It's just because we really like to share this.
Mm-hmm.
So compiling all this is
stupid wind, stupid cell phones.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, no, that's a tough thing overall to get that many people rallied together. Post-production's a nightmare. There's probably a ton of footage you guys have to comb through to get the good stuff, but I'm really hoping it'll be out this next year to share with everybody, because it's it's our labor of love, and it's just something we like to pass on to everybody else and to show everybody what's worked for us, so someone can take on what someone's given to us and hopefully put a few more bucks on the wall. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and end this segment, and want to say thanks again for being on the show. Hopefully we'll see you on the big screen in our living room soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, and I just to let everybody know too, it's going to be focused on small parcels too.
Okay, good.
everything we do has been kind of theme-based, and that's kind of the theme on this one, is really these smaller parcels.
Yeah, deer don't need a whole lot of room for a place to call it home. It's kind of a good, I like that. I'm excited to see it. I'll be very happy to watch it when it comes out, and we'll share it with our audience here. We get a good following, so it'll be nice.
All right, super.
Cool. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Looking for a spot to hunt? Download the free Where to Hunt app for your smartphone today. Avoid hunters, see less people, see more deer. With the Where to Hunt app, you will know where other hunters are before you see them. Just search Where to Hunt from the App Store to download today.
All right. Hopefully you liked that interview. A lot of good information there. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Cell phone coverage gets spotty sometimes. Tip of the week. That's what you're listening to right now. Our tip of the week is scent protection, scent cover. Only because, we just talked about all that wind stuff. I'm not talking about the typical scent kind of things here. It's more of a DIY, which is what I try to go for with these tips of the week. This week, I was thinking about, where I go hunting. I personally really like pines. I don't know, I'm just drawn to them. So I use a lot of pine boughs or pine branches. Just in my area, I use them, I grab them, I rub my hands on them, I kind of try to get that scent on me, and I put them around my area to help just mask the human scent that I have, any stench that I have from hiking out into the woods. And then so kind of seeing if other people do that, looking around and having some conversation following last week's tip, talking to the hunters. Turns out there's a lot of people that do their own scent cover, that they'll actually make it. They'll actually go out into the woods, get whatever vegetation that is in the area they primarily hunt, and they'll boil it in either water and or sometimes alcohol, like vodka or rubbing alcohol. And there's two different ways to do it, but nonetheless, they'll take that, let it ferment for a while, and then use the liquid left over as their scent blocker, which I never really thought about that. So here we are. We're talking about it. One person that I found online has a full-on list of ingredients, like you're gonna go cook some food. Says I'll just read off here. So like it says, go into a wooded area containing pine trees. So this is someone specifically that deals in that hunting a pine area. This wouldn't be recommended if there's no pines where you're hunting. That's silly, because then you'll stand out like a sore thumb probably. But they get a large bucket, 2 to 3 gallons, large pot with a lid, a cooking stove, large spoon, colander, medium to large container, funnel, and a spray bottle. And they literally take the twigs and the pine needles and boil it in water, bring it to a boil, and then they let it simmer for at least 30 minutes. The longer the better, I presume. And then they strain out the pine chunks and sticks and things like that, and put the liquid into a spray bottle, and that's it. Another one I found, they said they use alcohol, rubbing alcohol or vodka. And the reason they said they do that is because when you spray it, the alcohol will quickly evaporate, so leaving the scent that you want on your clothes, which initially reading them, like, why the hell would you use alcohol? Alcohol obviously has a distinct scent. So very, very interesting thing, anywhere from, just getting pine boughs that you put around your area to making your own scent-proof kind of thing, all the way to, obviously getting whatever vegetation is in the area. And the alcohol ingredient or recipe says that they let it sit for much, much longer. I think, I'm trying to find it in the article here, sorry. It was like days, like 20 days or something like that. The longer, the better. And then they also mentioned you can saturate them in cotton balls and carry that as your scent proof as well. So kind of a neat thing. Let us know or write in if it's something that you've ever done, if you have any tips that you can elaborate on how to do that, or if you've done it with success, or if you think it works, or how that compares to the store-bought stuff. Furthermore, in kind of going down this path and reading a little bit more, a lot of people are saying too, like, a lot of guys or a lot of hunters will spray themselves down before they go into the woods with their scent blocker, scent proof stuff, whatever brand you subscribe to, whatever kind or scent you, whether it's Eliminate or a cover up, whatever it might be. some people say that they bring it in the woods with them as well, and pay close attention to your hat and your hair, because that's where you do a lot of the sweating. So, and they spray themselves down again once they get to their tree or their spot or whatever it might be. Again, something else to consider. So if you have anything you'd like to add to that, you can always write us at our email address, which is where the number 2, the word hunt, wi@gmail.com. You can send us a message on Facebook, which is facebook.com/where-to-hunt-Wisconsin. You can reach us at Twitter, which is at the number 2, the word hunt. Would appreciate any sort of feedback in regard to that. Let us know.
I am a hunter, and I am safe. I got my long johns on and my orange ablaze. I have my GPS, and I never lose my place. I am a hunter, and I am safe.
So this week's segment about hunter incident reports. I tell you, man, some of these stories are pretty ridiculous. I seem to find a lot of them that have to do with being certain of your target and beyond. In this case, the person or the hunter was certain their target was a deer. They weren't so certain after the fact. Turns out the deer wasn't alive. The deer they were shooting wasn't alive, and as a result, they actually shot another hunter. Manhunting. Let's see here. Injured a second shooter after firing at a dead deer being hauled out of a wooded area. What the hell? What the hell? The second hunter had killed a deer and was using a cart to remove it from the property. This is in New York, by the way, and I'm trying to pick up in the right spot here. The first hunter saw the deer moving, thought it was alive, fired and struck the first hunter in the hand and the buttocks. Come on, you saw a deer moving, and I don't know. I know how a deer moves through the woods, and it doesn't just lay and kind of skirt across the land. And how do you not see someone dragging it? This stuff just blows my mind. It blows my mind. You shot a dead deer and you injured someone because you saw brown and you thought you're gonna take it down. There's gotta be more thought out there when you're in the woods. Hopefully none of the listeners have had any crazy experiences like that. If you have, actually, again, I'm gonna have another call to action here. Write us, send us an email. Let us know if you've encountered anything that will share your story. Hopefully everything's okay. You didn't get hurt, fatally or in a really bad way. But really like to hear some of your hunting experiences, and funny ones too. If there's just a funny story you have that you're dying to get off your chest, please share. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to share it with the rest of the audience. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and as always, hunt public land.
I am a hunter, and I am safe. I love to hunt in the United States, and I've always got my ear protection. I point my gun in the right direction. I'm a hunter, and I am safe.